I'm Rhian Kempadoo-Millar and I am a visual artist and designer based in Leeds. And I recently completed the Reflections of Carnival mural in Chapeltown in Leeds for East Street Arts.
And can you tell us a little bit about your involvement in East Street Arts programme and your experience of that mural?
So the mural was the first large-scale art piece I'd ever done, I'd ever been commissioned to do. I'm a trained costume designer, an artist, so it was it was quite a big challenge, and it was something completely different. But it came up, and Carnival's my passion; it's my field. So I decided to apply and got the commission, and then panicked and realised the size of the wall, but then decided to rise to the challenge and put together this design concept to work with East Street and the community to try to deliver something that everybody was wanted to see in the mural.
And because it was your first mural, can you tell us a bit about what support you felt you needed to be able to deliver it?
So this was my first large-scale piece like this, outdoor piece. So after I applied and had done the drawing in 2D and then realised it had to be scaled up to 90-something square meters, then I realised that we started to look at the sort of technical aspects. So we went through all the technical aspects of how we were going to how it was going to go upon the wall, how we were going to do it, the site, all of that kind of stuff. And then I hadn't actually ever been in a cherry picker, so that was a sort of whole new process. We had got training, that was amazing. Actually, we got training. We got there was me and another artist, Helen, and we decided we would do all the height stuff because obviously there's only two of you who can go fit in the cherry picker. So we did the training, we did our iPath, got our licenses, all supported by East Street Arts, and also just a lot of support around the how to grid it, how to there was Jay from Nomad Clan, and she gave some brilliant advice, and everybody was just really, really open and really friendly and really supportive. So I sort of began to feel more confident, and there was a team of us. So there was me, Alan, a guy called Reggie, and then eventually Kai as well. And between us, we just kind of worked everything out.
And what, in terms of it being again your sort of first commission of this scale, what did you learn from it, and how do you think it's now sort of maybe changed or informed your practice?
For me, it was just one of those things that was way out of my comfort zone, but I felt like it was a bit of a bucket list opportunity, like something I probably wouldn't have ordinarily necessarily done, but it came up and I thought it would be amazing to do something on that scale. It's my subject, it's my community, it was a really good fit, so I was really happy when I got it. And I think just in terms of confidence, going outside of your comfort zone, taking risks, I think as artists sometimes you get a bit pigeonholed into one particular, you get your field of expertise and you get quite comfortable and everybody knows you and you know what you're doing. And then sometimes to just throw yourself out, and that's a big. I think East Street Arts did an amazing, because they took a risk. And I think as artists sometimes you don't want to because you worry, especially something on that scale. And so it was really good. It was really good for me to be in a different medium, different way to think, different team. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. So I think what happens is if you can do that in one art form, if you can do that in that way, I think you sort of take a bit of the blinkers off a little bit and you start to sort of see what else is out there, who's doing what, and maybe open up yourself up to more sort of collaborations, and you understand what's happening nationally, regionally, internationally, because you're in a different field. So suddenly you're exposed to all these new people, and I think as artists you have to sort of do that every so often, push yourself out of your comfort zone a bit.
Do you think you'd do another public art piece?
Would I do another public art piece? It's been a while now. It was last year. So I have been asked actually to do a few, which I haven't done because I had other projects in the pipeline. Of that scale, probably not. I don't know. I don't necessarily know if I would, but certainly within that field, yeah. And definitely, working with teams or sort of some of the younger members that were coming through that have showed an interest, I'd really love to be sort of involved in that. I mean, I'm 47 now, and sort of, not that that's any kind of barrier, but sort of physically,
Yeah,
it
it's
was
physical.
really, I could feel, in the mornings, I was like it's quite tough physically, yeah. It's hard going, absolute respect to everybody who does these huge ones, because it's physically, it's tough. It's tough conditions to work in. But never say never. That's what I'll say.
Well, that leads on to the next subsection nicely, which is about working with and in communities. So using your experience of Reflections of Carnival, how do you feel artists and communities work best together?
I think that it's really important for artists and communities. I came more from a community arts background, and I'd been working in schools and education and carnival, which is all community culture education. So it was quite easy to cross that over into this art form, because it's just kind of naturally, it's the same way to be, just a slightly different art form. And I think it's really important not to you can end up maybe quite detached sometimes, where I think as an artist sometimes you have a vision and it's your vision and it's your baby, and it's quite easy for it to become quite detached. But something like public art, it's out in the communities, it's on people's walls, it's in the middle of people, it's not on a canvas in someone's house. So I think there has to be a conversation, and it's quite a difficult line sometimes to know which way around. But I think the success of this mural, I know it was really on the table even from the application process. It was really at the beginning of it wasn't just what will you do, but what will you do in relation to the community you're working with? How will you engage people? How will you bring the art and the community together into something that everybody's happy with, which is actually quite difficult. It's actually quite a difficult brief to do it well. It's quite a difficult brief, but I think we did really well. I think we did a lot of outreach work. We worked with elders, we worked with schools, we worked with just chatting to people even in the street, just being around. And I think a big part of the success was also being based in Carnival Home. We made this our headquarters, which they were so generous. Leeds West Indian Carnival was so generous with their time and energy and space, and they just let us use it as a base. And naturally, this place is the community heart. So just by being here, even if you're just sitting down at the table drawing, and the kids are coming in and saying, "What are you doing? Oh, I think that should be purple. I think that should be pink." That, without having to even do the sort of the bit where we were going out to do the community engagement, if you like, it was just by being in and around the building, and chatting to people in the street. And obviously people knew quite quickly that there was going to be a mural and I was going to be doing it. So there was just lots of people. It was really nice. It was a really really interesting part of the process for me. It was the bit that it was nice, because I think because from the beginning I was asked to do that. I hadn't been really prescriptive, like it's going to look like this. I'd kind of left a lot of vague, it's going to have a vague narrative like this, but then all the bits in between. So there was a lot of flex in it. So I think it was sort of, because that was put from the beginning, it meant didn't feel like it was bolted on as a sort of tick box at the end. It was integrated into the project. So I loved it. I loved that way of working.
So was there any feedback that made you have to sort of address the design at all, or change or incorporate new things?
Yes. The very, very first characters that were painted into the mural, I think it was the first character actually that we've painted in. It's a character called the Blue Devil. It's a Trinidadian character, carnival character, which had been put into the sort of, was a concept to have some of the sort of traditional masquerade characters, leading down into more design stuff that's recognisable from Leeds, and more current and contemporary. And they were put in, and within maybe 3 or 4 hours of them being painted in, the local church expressed that they weren't really happy. It's a Blue Devil character. It's not in relation to religion or the devil. It's a parody character. Actually, it's a slave master parody character. But they just expressed that they didn't feel it. Actually, it was interesting because their take on it was that they didn't feel it was celebratory, and it felt like, they said that they felt like, as a community that can sometimes be quite demonized, they didn't enjoy the symbolism of it, and it felt like it was almost not validating but reinforcing that as you drive round the corner, and they felt like, because it was on the edge of the wall, as you come in round the corner from Sheepscar and you're entering, there's, and of course I just hadn't seen it like that because I'm looking at it culturally as it's a Trinidad Carnival character. So it was really interesting, and that's what's great about putting the flex in and not being too precious, but it's my dial, because I could have just said, well, tough, that's the design. But it was amazing, and so I went over to the church, and we had a little meeting, we had a cup of tea, and they just expressed like it was uncomfortable, and could I take it out, and maybe, I said, yeah, these are the other characters, what would you like to see, what could we put in? And we took it out, painted it out the following day. I think I went back up and painted it out that evening, so that when they came back the following day they could feel that I'd listened. And then actually that space was left almost till the end, and in the end it worked out brilliantly, because after a conversation with Arthur France from Leeds West Indian Carnival, he said, but why isn't Ian in there? And we found a traditional mask picture of Ian in traditional mask character, which went in that space. So it was great. It was really great in the end, and I think it was important because the church, it's overlooking the church, so it was really important to have that conversation, and me just to see a different perspective. I hadn't really seen it like that, so yeah.
And I think just one more question quickly on community. It's just all of that work that you did, and the work that all the partners did in terms of involving the community. How important do you see that as the sort of ownership people feel over it now, and the responses that people have locally?
I think this mural particularly, because I know it's a part of a series, but I think this mural particularly, that was really, really at the forefront from the call out. Actually, it was always at the forefront. It has to be community led. There has to be a lot of community engagement. It has to be something that at the end there's a feeling of ownership. It's not just a piece that's being put there for people to look at and go, that's nice. It has to really fit, and it has to mean something to people who live, to the community. And I think to get that balance of, and to do that all the way through, it wasn't just that it was done for a little bit in the beginning and then we just did the design, and it was the whole way through until the very last day where the cherry picker broke. It was right through to the end, and then the launch. And I think the launch, I was quite nervous about the launch, because obviously, you kind of finish, you pack up everything, you go home and you think, okay, well, I hope everybody likes it. And then you have to, go to the launch and think, okay, well, I know for a fact everyone's going to tell me what they really think it's going to be. So, and generally, it felt really celebratory. A lot of people, the feedback was generally really, really positive. And I know for a fact that people use it as a reference point. I know there's events that use it as a beginning or an end. And just the scale of the launch and the vibe of the launch, it was a celebration. It really felt like a celebration. So for me, regardless of the bits of the mural that I look and well, maybe I would have changed that, and I don't like how that hand is or whatever, that's not really the point. And that, I think, was achieved really well in this, and I think it's still, I haven't really had any negative feedback, which I'm quite prices out. But yeah, it's seen, and the launch was just amazing. It was a real celebration, not just of the mural, but of just the arts and culture that's here in the community. It was a massive celebration for everybody. So I just feel really privileged to have done something as part of that, part of the community. Yeah.
So statistically, there's a lack of artists of colour working in the public art arena. Why do you feel that might be? What might be the barriers? And what do you think we could do to try and address some of that?
I mean, not being from the public art sector until this, and obviously then beginning to have an awareness of it, I didn't really know that statistic. I applied just really a bit off the cuff and not really necessarily understanding the sort of bigger or wider picture. I have much more understanding now because I've come into contact with a lot more people doing public art. And I don't know maybe whether it's access to the opportunity. I was sent this link by quite a lot of people, more probably because it had Carnival in the title than the fact that it was a mural. I think maybe that's why. So I was forwarded it quite a lot, but I didn't come across it necessarily in my, I wasn't coming, I don't know, I didn't, it was sent to me quite directly to apply, and so I applied. So I'm not sure whether or not it's the forums or whether it's just actually that there's just an actual, because I don't know that there's a lack of diverse artists in the North. Certainly in my world there is, but in terms of linking with the opportunities, knowing where they are, this particular brief, I think it was quite accessible. It was very clear, it felt really accessible. It was an arena that, for someone like myself who wouldn't normally look at a piece of public art commission and think, oh, I'll apply for that, but everything about it seemed like it'd been really well considered. And as diverse an artist, it would speak in a way that would make you think, if I apply for that, there's a chance I might get it. Or that it's a subject matter that culturally would be of interest. So I'm not sure whether or not it's in the call-out process, the subject matter process, if there's something within the communication, or where those things are being posted. Because if they're posted on things like arts jobs, you already have to be working in that field to know it's going to be on arts jobs or curator space. So if you're a sort of early stage artist or you're working in public arts, you're maybe quite, I think maybe you're sort of you graduate or something like that, and you're looking to get into public art arena, you won't necessarily always be on all of those platforms. So I don't know whether or not it's knowing, and I think many times as well within maybe street art and public art, it's not necessarily the people that are more visible. You have to find where those people are and then take the opportunities to know. We had this young boy who was with us, Kai, and it was just a complete fluke that we sort of crossed paths. And he's exactly the kind of young, talented artist, but wouldn't necessarily be on the radar and probably wouldn't maybe have the confidence or knowledge to apply for something. So I think it has to come from both sides, and for people to feel like if they're going to apply for stuff, there's not going to be loads of barriers to them, because it's a lot of work to put in presentations and applications and upload everything. It's work, and if you feel after a certain amount of time that the commissions are just always going to go to the same, I mean, unfortunately, but I know for a fact that the street art scene in Leeds sometimes is referred to the boys' network, and people use that quite openly, and I don't know if that's true or not, but it's kind of referred to as the sort of the in-crowd boys' network. And if this subject wasn't Carnival, I wouldn't have thought, okay, well, I've got a chance to go apply for that, even just as a visual artist. So then maybe there's something about the perception that, well, it's just always going to go to the same people, or it's just, this person's just going to give it, it's always just going to go to the same, which might be quite off-putting, I think, in people to apply.
What opportunities do you feel are out there for sort of new aspiring artists, and particularly people who might be on the verge of wanting to go into working outdoors and in the public art world, but maybe there's some barriers, some challenges, and some lack of confidence? Like, what do you think we could do to sort of help people achieve that?
I think in terms of the barriers and like accessibility, for me, what I can sort of see is that there's a lot of, there's what a lot of people have a passion for art in their teens. Actually, I heard a statistic yesterday which was quite interesting, which was that kids absorb and engage in creativity under the age of 5 is something like 95%, and over the age of 21, it's 5%. I don't know exactly. I can't give this, but I just heard it yesterday, and I was really like, wow. So I think you're gonna have to work. There's quite a small number of people who are going to have kind of got themselves to the point where they're sort of maybe in their sort of late teens, early 20s, maybe wanted to go into public art, and then you have this huge jump into the sort of big commissions, the arts funding streams, and you've got this bit in between where there kind of needs to be maybe some sort of like program. When I was 17, 18, I remember I felt like I had quite a lot of organisations that kind of held my hand a little bit, and you would get these smaller commissions and start to understand how it works and how it works as a freelancer and the who's who. And maybe there's something in between, whether that's sort of like a program to help young artists that are really interested in public art, murals, street art, where they're kind of mentored. They're mentored by the people who are the big international artists or the regional artists, and they know what they're going into. They understand things like even the insurances and where they might apply for funding and how they might set themselves up. All of that stuff, I think, would help them to have the confidence of what the things that they're going to need, and even just the sort of basics of being able to shadow a program where maybe they could sort of shadow some of the people who are doing the bigger commissions. They're introduced, and there's a level of like mentorship and access to funds, even if it's quite small amounts of funds, for them to set themselves up, because that can be a massive barrier. If you go home and say, I want to be a mural artist, and there's not necessarily the money to be able to send you on an IPAF course to be able to do your cherry picker license, and all of those things that you would buy a harness and and even the equipment. People say but I've been a graffiti artist since I was 12, but it's also not that it's not cheap. It's I think it's all of those things, and I think maybe some sort of program, regional, national, where young people in that period, not even just young people actually, maybe just people looking, and like an access course, kind of like a BTEC in street art, like where you can come in and it's just and it's that to bridge that gap, so you don't lose all the potential people wanting to go into that field with the talent and the passion, just because of the lack of accessibility, or knowing where to go, or, so I think that would be great. And I think on the back of these projects that have been happening, I think it happened naturally. We ended up with our sort of apprentice, who's now getting some opportunities off the back of it. Actually, he's had a couple of offers off the back of it, and I'm really happy with that. So it's that bit, yeah. So maybe sort of some of the bigger arts organisations could have smaller programmes that shadow alongside these big ones like the City Less Grey kind of projects, and create those opportunities to come through the ranks a bit.
So the last question I've got is just about sustainability and climate change, that carbon footprint. So obviously with public art, sometimes it's quite difficult to be climate change friendly, as it were, with the materials that are used. But I know that's something you're conscious of in your practice, and you were thought about with this commission. So could you just tell us a little bit about that?
When I did the application for the Carnival mural, it was one of the things that we were asked was about, was there anything sort of from an environmental perspective? And I did have a bit of a question mark about using spray paints, because it doesn't really sit comfortably within my kind of ethics, either as carnival or visual or costume. It's always coming from quite a sustainable perspective. And so I did, obviously asked around and found out that there was a lot of alternatives, really, really good kind of eco-based, water-based paints and paints that you could use that didn't have, that weren't necessarily cans. And I think it's just to be like being aware of that from the beginning, and even within the designs, it wasn't designed to be a sprayed piece, because from an environmental impact, I wasn't really comfortable with using sprays. I know you can get much more environmental sprays these days, and maybe again, I mean, that might be something to create a resource place, where, I mean, I just did my own research and asked people, and they said, yeah, you can use this paint and that, this one's better than that one, and now there are some really, really good paints out there to be able to use, and even into, like we got some stuff from the Seagulls, the recycling paint place, and then the stuff that was left over is going to be used in another project, and trying to not double buy everything, checking, what resources do we already have before you go out and buy everything new. So I think, just to sort of to be conscious in the design process that it's designed with the environment, with an environmental idea, and maybe it already exists, I'm not sure, but like a sort of resource center, even within the region, you could have a resource center where all the paints, whether it's the old sprays or whatever, maybe it already exists, I don't know, but and you can go, and somebody who did a project and had X amount of cans or paint left over, or brushes or rollers or whatever you're using, it's a kind of a little resource center to put stuff in and take stuff out, and not rebuy everything every time.